Now we are going to move ahead with our schedule, and our next speaker is actually our keynote speaker for today, Professor B.C. Nirmal. He is the former Vice Chancellor, National Law University, Jharkhand, and former Dean, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, India. Mr. Srivastav, I would like to ask you to please introduce Dr. B.C. Nirmal. Hey, are you a doctor, a professor, an academician, or somebody in a similar profession? Are you looking for a research journal to get your research paper published which can benefit the nation? If so, then your search has ended because I am here to tell you about Tejasvi Astrikul, which is a research journal registered by RNI, the Registrar of Newspaper of India, and ISSN, which is International Standardized Serial Number. To get your research paper published with Tejasvi Astrikul, which is a registered magazine with Government of India, you can log on to our website www.tejasviastrikul.com, or you can also send us an email at editor.tejasviastrikul@gmail.com. You can also get your article published with Tejasvi Astrikul web portal, which you can find on our website www.tejasviastrikul.com. Dr. B.C. Nirmal, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
All right, sir. Even I am able to hear you, but your voice is a little faint.
No.
Dr. B.C. Nirmal, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning to this international webinar today. This is Dr. B.C. Nirmal, as you all can see. He is the keynote speaker, and Dr. Prasad Rao from MR College is going to introduce Dr. B.C. Nirmal. Can you please go ahead, Dr. Prasad Rao?
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Respected eminent resource persons, Dr. Srivastava and the entire team of Tejasvi Astrikul Foundation, and Mansas management members, our beloved correspondent, Professor KDL Raj Garu, and our college level webinar organizing committee headed by the principal, Dr. G.R. Kalyani, and the other organizing members, my dear heterogeneous group of delegates, my hearty greetings to all of you. Introducing myself, Dr. VVSS with Prasad Rao Patnaik. I'm a reader in mathematics, head of the Department of Computer Science and IQS coordinator. I'm highly privileged to have an opportunity to introduce Professor B.C. Nirmal, who is an eminent person who is now going to deliver his keynote address. If one closely observes the current scenario of the entire globe, one can assess that neither military power nor wealth can stop the destructive spread of a tiny member of dangerous family of viruses. This is an add-on to the existing global threats like climate change, terrorism, and these are the problems without passports that cannot be stopped at borders. To come out safely from such panic situations, collaboration seems to be the best remedy. And this point made us to collaborate with the Tejasvi Astrikul Foundation New Delhi. And this collaboration definitely throws light on the need for the research during the pandemics to keep the panic mental thoughts away from us and learning from it. So webinar of this kind is need of the hour. Today, at this inaugural session, we have with us to deliver his keynote address a towering personality, Professor B.C. Nirmal, a widely acclaimed legal scholar of international law, human rights, consumer law, environmental law, and labor law. He is one among the top 5 professors of Banaras Hindu University and has been placed in the category of legal scholars along with V.K. Menon, V.R. Krishna Iyer, Upendra Bakshi, Madhav Menon, and L. Sarkar. Regarding his recent role, Nirmal, after attaining the highly prestigious position as the Vice Chancellor of National University of Study and Research in Law, Ranchi, Jharkhand, he shifted the campus to the new campus of the university to create an environment which is suitable for the learning to the students of the postgraduate studies and research programs. And I also sought to take the university towards excellence through several initiatives like publishing of prestigious journals, NUSRL Journal of Law and Policy, and NUSRL newsletters. Several seminars, conferences, moot court competitions, and other academic events have also been organized during his tenure. But prior to that, his role at BHU, we can say that Professor Nirmal not only contributed to teaching and research enrichment, but also played a pioneering role in the all-round development of the Faculty of Law as Dean. Law School, BHU. During his tenure, he designed several initiatives for restoring the prestige and image of faculty at national level. He started the publication of BHU Law School newsletter, and later it is shaped as the prestigious Banaras Law Journal. The first international conference and the first Madan Mohan Malviya moot court competition were also organized during his deanship. The conference papers presented at national and international seminars were subsequently published as books by reputed publishers such as Springer. During his tenure, he introduced a new course in law school, which demanded in present time BA LLB 5 years course, 1 year LLM course, and 8 diploma courses too. He held so many positions like head dean of law school, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. He also been the vice president of Indian Society of International Law, New Delhi, and vice president of All India Law Teachers Congress, and he was a member of the Academic Council of Professor of the Gujarat National Law University, Gujarat. He also the vice president of All India Law Teachers Congress and Commonwealth Legal Education Asia India, and was a member of the governing body of Indian Law Institute.
I consider it a great privilege and honor to be invited to speak as a keynote speaker in this prestigious international webinar on research methodology, trends, quality, ethics, and value in global perspective, which is, in my view, is a very distinct webinar because of 3 reasons. Number one, the theme of the webinar. Number two, high credentials of speakers who will be speaking today and tomorrow. And third, level of participation and composition of delegates. I will start with the statement that research methodology is a subject whose time has come. Blessed are those who have an opportunity to study research methodology at different levels of their education. In our days, there was no such course as research methodology, so we had to learn the basics of research methodology through trial error method. But today, there are many courses on research methodology run by universities at postgraduate and doctoral levels. And moreover, seminars, conferences, colloquia, and workshops are also being organized on research methodology in different parts of the country throughout the year. As I told you in the very beginning, I consider this webinar to be strikingly different from other webinars, this session of webinars, because of the reason that Tejasvi of Kitwa and Maharaja College both have been collaborating in organizing seminars and conferences on different aspects of higher education. And this webinar is in continuation of their joint endeavor. Friends, as I am a man of law, I have decided to speak something on legal research in India problems and challenges. But before I discuss this issue with you, I would like to raise certain issues which are common to all kinds of legal research in this country. What are the reasons for poor quality of research in this country? This basic question requires consideration by all concerned, including legal educators of any discipline. First question is, what is research? What are the reasons for poor quality of research? What is the relationship between higher education and research? What are the remedial measures to improve the quality of research? So these questions need to be considered by all in order to improve the quality of research. But before we discuss these issues, it is necessary for us to ponder over for a moment the state of higher education in our country. According to a recent World Survey Review, 4 universities have been top-ranking universities: Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford. What about our universities? If I am not wrong, then only 2 or 3 universities have found place in the first 200 universities. So you can imagine the kind of higher education that we have at present. Just imagine, Banaras University has been ranked as 3rd institute in the order of excellence in a survey by Ministry of Human Resource Development. But then the position of Banaras University is 801 in the survey I referred to. So let us understand why these universities are better than ours. And if we look into the parameters on the basis of which the aforesaid quiz service, QS survey, was made, then parameters are academic reputation, employer reputation, faculty-student ratio, international research network, citations per paper, and papers per faculty, staff with a PhD, proportion of international faculty, and proportion of international students, and finally proportion of inbound and outbound exchange students. So therefore, I have always been saying for the last so many years that if India had to become a Vishwaguru, world teacher, then we will have to make our universities competitive with global universities. Unfortunately, we do not have even a single university which can be classified as a world-class university at the moment. So what are the requirements? What should be done? Number one is international faculty, international students, world-class infrastructure, and moreover, inspiring and motivating research and teaching culture. Just imagine, where do we stand? Judge the university system on these parameters. And to our big dismay, and it is very fortunate that government is spending on higher education is not increasing, it is rather decreasing. So in this context, we have to consider the reasons for quality of poor research in this country. Let us consider all the issues one by one. I have noted certain definitions of research. First is that research is a systematic inquiry to describe, explain, predict, and control the observed phenomena. Research involves inductive and deductive methods. Inductive methods are used to analyze and observe phenomena, and deductive methods are used to verify and observe phenomena. Likewise, W. Creswell has said that research is a process of steps to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. It consists of 3 steps: pose a question, collect data to answer and questions, and present an answer to the question. So it means pose, collect, present. And if we go through by Merriam-Webster dictionary, then research is a studious inquiry or examination or investigation or experimentation aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of existing facts or law, or practical application of such new or revised facts. So friends, research doesn't mean discovery. Research also does not mean invention fit for grant of patent under the Patents Act. It may lead to copyrightable or patentable matter. So we should try to understand that research is a step towards understanding our knowledge of a particular topic or issue. Let me explain what I have just said. Recently, Chinese forces have made illegal incursions in the Ladakh area. Although our government denies it, but we all know what has happened in Galwan and other parts of Ladakh. So one possible question is, why did China choose this time to make these illegal incursions into Ladakh when there is a very close relationship between the summit leadership of both countries? This may be one question. And there may be various answers also. But a researcher does not go by media reports only or by public perception. He will have to examine the issue in threadbare in the light of facts. And I am reminded of what I had experienced with regard to this dispute. In 2010, I was invited by Xiamen Academy of International Law to deliver 10 lectures on international criminal law. The state counselor was very friendly and kind to me. He talked about Indo-China relations. He also laid emphasis on people contact. So that was very good experience for me, because Xiamen Academy of International Law emerging as an Asian counterpart of the Academy of International Law. But when I was
तो आप इंट्रोड्यूस कर दीजिए हमको.
When I was to come, then a Chinese professor told me, sir, what is the reason for Indo-Sino-Indian border dispute? I was so enraged with this question. I told that time you stabbed us in the back, but India of today is quite different from India of 1962. And if China makes any adventurous attempt to attack us again, we will be able to give befitting reply to you your soldiers. But let me tell you with great disappointment that recent events have proved me wrong. But I am not going to pass any judgment on this or that action of the government. what I want to illustrate is that when any question comes to your mind, then try to ascertain the truth. Have an inquisitive mind, have an open mind, have a questioning mind, because days are gone when we thought there was an objective truth for everything. This is the age of truths, and postmodernity and critical legal study movement have revealed that there may not be only one truth, there may be various truths. So this is very important for all of us when we research any topic of interest. Now, what are the requirements of a good quality research? In brief, you can say that it should be original, it should be socially relevant, it should be so innovative, and so on. But the scholars have pointed out different characteristics of a good quality research. Many of you are already aware with this. I will pick up some of the points which are necessary to make research a quality research. Number one is a question, a significant question, which is fit for a thorough investigation. Number two, a well-defined research problem. Number three, a well-formulated hypothesis. Number four, appropriate research method. Number five, based on inferential reasoning backed by facts and data. And then there are many other things which are required to make a research original. For example, good referencing, it is also very important. Consideration of all perspectives, respect for people with different opinions, and assessment of impact of bias on the research. So these are some of the requirements which must be followed by any researcher who wants to produce a high quality research. Here, the question of ethics also comes to our mind. And that is why there is an emphasis on research ethics. And I would like to explain this with one anecdote which I had heard from my father, who was a professor of English. A friend of Dr. Johnson asked him to go through his essay and give his comments. Dr. Johnson did not speak for many days, and then when his friend lost his patience, he asked Dr. Johnson about his remarks on the essay written by him. He said, most of the things are borrowed, and what is yours is nothing but a kind of stupidity. So even in those days, this kind of plagiarism or imitation or was common. And these things should be avoided. I remember we had not heard the word plagiarism. We had not heard anything about anti-plagiarism software, because it was believed that if you write something, you will follow a not only research method, appropriate research method, but also research ethics. And we were trained by our supervisor, our teacher, to be honest in our approach to any research problem. So, but that is not happening today. The reasons are many. I may come to that later on. Now, what should not be the criteria of crime should not be a characteristic of a research. Number one, question design to a particular conclusion. Non-availability of data and information for further verification, or non-availability, and then lack of balanced approach, lack of other perspective. So these are some of the demerits or disqualifications of a good research. I just give you one example. Mr. X was not a good prime minister. You can pose this question like it. Was he a failure as a prime minister? Now, you can pick up 2, 3, 4 pieces here and there and put them together and can conclude that yes, Mr. So and so was not a good prime minister, or Mr. So and so was a failure as a prime minister. This is wrong, because you have already decided to reach a particular conclusion, and for that you are not really relying on genuine references, but on references to wide data or organization. You are not considering the issue from all perspectives. You are not fair. You are not impartial in your research. I always say that in order to be a good scholar, one should be believer of rationality and reason and scientific temper. I do not comment on what is happening with scientific temper today. But remember, if India had become a power to reckon with at the international level, it is because of scientific temper. Our scientists, technologists, and others followed all these years. And it is because of pursuit of scientific temper, adherence to scientific temper, that India is now a nuclear power, a space power, an information technology power, and India is also a very important emerging strategic, economically and strategically emerging power. So it is because of scientific temper. If you forget scientific temper, you cannot make a good research. Let us learn something from our past also. So long as we believed in reason, rationality, and scientific temper, India was the way of civilization. Just go through the writings of Bhaskaracharya or Aryabhatta, all the scientists. So when we have lost region, then there was a decay in our culture and civilization. So this is all about the quality of research. Now, come to what are the problems faced by Indian researchers. In this context, I am reminded of what Mr. Professor S. Pal, a distinguished scientist and former chairman of University Grant Commission, had said. My complaint against the present education system in our country is that it tends to be contextually disconnected. Personal observation and experience do not change what is required to be learned and how it is to be learned. A defined collection of competence and well-listed pieces of information constitute education for everyone with little or no room for personal variation. So we all know what is wrong with our higher education. In the light of my own experience of last 45 years, I have come to the conclusion that most of the research scholars do not have a clear understanding of the basics of research methodology. I went somewhere in some university to conduct the PhD Viva Bursing to be scholar. And then principal said, you also deliver a lecture to our LLM students. I was not prepared for that, but he suggested the topic of research methodology. So I just asked them, do you have any idea what he meant by research? The answer was no, do not know. Then I asked them, do you have you heard the name of Journal of Indian Law Institute? They asked no. Then I asked them, do you know how references are to be cited? There are various ways and modes of referencing in legal journals. Are you aware of any referencing procedure, method? And their answer was nothing in the negative. So if that is the situation, you cannot expect to improve the quality of research, because LLM dissertation is a key to doctoral research. And doctoral research requires a training at the level of postgraduate level, and that is done through writing of a good postgraduate dissertation. I had written my LLM dissertation on a very challenging topic, most favored nation clause, problems and attempts at codification. At that time, the International Law Commission was working on that topic, and the topic was very difficult. And subsequently, I realized that the topic related to international trade law and most favored nation law, most favored nation clause is the guiding principle of GATT 1947. Now it has become the foundational principle of the GATT 1994. So our professor suggested me a very challenging topic for my LLM dissertation at that time. I will come to that point later on. What I want to say is that when there is ignorance or pervasive ignorance among our students with regard to the basics of research methodology, we cannot expect fruitful and meaningful PG or doctoral research from them. Then there are many other problems also. There are no incentives for good and quality research. I can say this in the light of my own experience. Just have a look what is happening in our universities. Those who are doing other things, they get promotion. And those who are serious and sincere researchers, they may not get family upward mobility. Third point is that compulsion of teachers to acquire minimum API. This is, I think, has also created a problem. When UGC made PhD compulsory, the standard of PhD lowered down. And when UGC made publication compulsory, the standard of research papers also lowered down. So I think we have to consider it, because if there is a compulsion to have certain API index, API number, then certainly the scholar or teacher would like to publish their articles in what I always say, predatory journal. Many typists of years have now become publishers of journals. So things have improved with the intervention of UGC, but UGC first list and then now second list, and their emphasis is on a particular kind of journals. They give preference to Scopus and web series journals. I beg to differ with the UGC because as a person who had participated in several interviews, I can say that it is very easy for experts to understand what works are good and what works are not good. They know what are the best journals in their discipline. While I am not against insistence on Scopus or any other kind of journal, I always wish to emphasize that do we have sufficient number of quality and equality journals in our country? And if you go through, you will find, I can say, with respect to law, there is one journal, that is Journal of Indian Law Institute, ILI Law Review, Annual Survey of Indian Law. All these are considered good journals, are top ranking journals in this country. Likewise, Indian Journal of International Law or ISIL Yearbook of International Humanitarian and Refugee Law are considered to be topmost journals in international law in this country. But they do not find any place in the Scopus list of journals. So, first thing is to encourage our teachers and scholars to do research. Let there be an urge, let there be a longing in scholars and teachers to do research, and then to do good research, and further to do outstanding research. So you cannot make a Plato or Aristotle or Socrates in one day. This is a continuous process. A researcher of today may become a good researcher of tomorrow and an outstanding researcher after 2, 3, 4 years later. So that point should also be taken into consideration. Now, I come to what is the place of research in higher education? When I became a lecturer in 1975, my senior told me, don't write anything for the time being. Try to establish yourself as a good teacher for at least 6 years. Although I did not adhere to their advice, I started writing much earlier. But then this shows how much importance was given to teaching at that time. Our universities were considered primarily as teaching institutions, and research was a secondary aspect of the university system. There were various laboratories, National Physical Laboratory, National Chemical Laboratory, then DRDO, then ISRO, then Indian Council of Agriculture Research, CSIR, and so on and so forth. They were exclusively research institutions. But with the passage of time, it was realized that universities can also play an important role in the development of our country through path-breaking research. India needed a fillip on the path to modernization, westernization, urbanization, and we also needed research to address our perennial problems like poverty, unemployment, disease, and illiteracy. So for that purpose, it was required that universities should also come forward. The American campaign, American slogan, publish or perish, also stimulated our thinking here. And we universities also embarked on the path of research. So today, you find that research has come to occupy a prominent place in higher education system. But why there are so many expectations from our universities, we find that many disciplines in our university system do not get sufficient attention of the funds granting agencies. It is not a problem for professors of science, technology, medical science, and agriculture. Funds are liberally funded by different agencies. But that is certainly a problem for professors of other disciplines like humanities, social sciences, and law. So this is a big problem. I recognize the importance of scientific and technological research in this country, but I also recognize the importance of research in other disciplines like humanities, social science, and law, because unless and until there is a judicial mix of research in all disciplines of human knowledge, India cannot be a well-developed country in the days to come. I have already told you that because of our adherence to regional rationality and scientific temper, India became a power in certain respects like nuclear power. But what is happening is that we are also blindly aping the West under the mistaken belief that what is best for the Western countries is also best for our country, ignoring the social, economic, political, and technological backgrounds of our own country. So we have to think over this issue. I think that we should set out our own research agenda in the national interest. Then we have to think about, I have already read this issue, cultural imperialism. Cultural imperialism is impacting the natural and spontaneous flow of research in our country. Because I have heard many teachers, sir, there is no Scopus journal. Where we will publish our papers. So that is the point. I will say that these considerations should be taken into account by policymakers in our country. As I told you in the very beginning, first, encourage students for an original research. Second, increase the number of high quality research. Third, again, give emphasis on high quality journals. We too have published articles in foreign journals, but then our agenda of research has been quite different from that the Western countries, for us, our problems are poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, disease. So all these problems are there. When I started writing on these aspects, many professors used to say, why do you take up these issues? I told them, these are our issues. And if you don't do research on these, you will not be honest to our profession. So I will say that instead of going by what others are dictating to us, we should develop our own parameters for assessment of research papers, for assessment of research products in our country. Now coming to remedial measures. Remedial measures, you all know very wrong. And so you can also point out what is to be needed. What I feel is that there is a need for the overhauling of our education and research system. And some of the measures which may be taken in this regard are what is transparency in appointment of vice chancellor, respect for autonomy and independence of universities and centers of learning, incentives for good research in our universities and colleges, increased funds availability for research purposes, incentives for young and bright scholars. So all these measures are to be taken in order to improve the quality of research in this country. Main important thing is merit. If you recognize merit as the only criteria for other things in the academic world, then only we can inspire the coming generations to enter meaningful and fruitful research exercise. With these general backgrounds, which I thought should be shared with you all, because problems of legal research are not quite different from problems of research in disciplines like humanities, social science, and humanities, social science, and other disciplines. Now, coming to legal education, it's a very interesting aspect. You all know that legal education was in a state of disarray, not only in this country, but also in the developed country like United States of America. It was in the last years of the 19th century that legal education found a shape under the leadership of Christopher Langdon, the then Dean of Law Faculty, Harvard Law School. And if you look at legal education in our country, you will find that legal education was in a highly pitiable. Even when law classes started in Banaras University, then 5-6 lads from Allahabad High Court used to come to Varanasi for taking classes here. Satej Bahadur Sapru, Kailash Nath Khalji, and others were among those lecturers at that time. But they were High Court lawyers, not only High Court lawyers, they were distinguished High Court lawyers of that time. So that was the problem at that time. Classes were run in the morning or evening, and as I told you, with the help of lawyers. legal education has a very limited objective of producing law to serve the needs of clients. And it was confined to transmission of certain facts and information to law students without taking into account critical perspectives and analytical skills to be developed among law students. Things began to improve when Professor Anandji, Dean of Law School, Banaras University, took initiative to improve legal education. With the support of Justice Yashan Bhagauti, father of Justice P.N. Bhagauti, in this regard, a 3-year, 6-semester course was introduced, and that course was a judicious admixture of theory and practical. So that way, legal education began to develop in our country. Other universities also followed the suit. Bar Council of India also accepted our plan and recommended the same to other universities. So in this way, you find that legal education itself was in a state of disarray for so many years. So the question of post-graduation in law did not arise at all, or it was given a very little attention at that time. I am just telling you, during 1916 to 1964, only 4 or 5 LLMs were produced by Law School, Banaras University. Such was the time for post-graduation studies in law. It was said that if you have a LLB degree, you have a passport to become a lecturer in a law school. But subsequently, things improved, things changed, and now you find that LLM degree has also become like any postgraduate degree. So, if that was the situation, you can imagine the state of doctoral research in our country. Many law teachers went to United States and Great Britain, obtained PhD degrees. They returned back and they started guiding doctoral research here also. So first PhD in law produced by law school was Professor Dr. R.M. in 1985. And now what is happening? Just see, there are more than 100 to 120 students enrolled in law school, in every law school for PhD. And this has created a kind of mismatch between supply and demand. And so one should not be surprised if a person with PhD degree remains unemployed for 2 or 3 years, or they don't get job commensurate with their qualification. What is very interesting to tell you here is that when there was a lot of difficulty in having PhD here, then many teachers used to enroll themselves in other departments like history, sociology, and economics and others, and get degrees from there and reap the benefits of a doctorate degree, which were available to a doctorate in law. So this is all about legal education here. Research problems are many old, and I have already referred to both problems. I will just mention one operation and then conclude, and that is Former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh once said that India of the 21st century will be made in universities and other centers of learning, and they shall remake India and the world. It therefore becomes imperative that the schools undertake original and path-breaking research to create new knowledge and ideas that will help the countries to address the age-old problems of poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, and disease, and respond to new challenges that India is facing in today's interdependent world. To achieve this, appropriate measures need to be taken without any further delay in order to develop an inspiring and motivating culture of research in our country.
Thank you very much, sir. We are very honored to have you here today.